A young nun pens a letter divulging a secret she has kept since childhood. But the Vatican fears the letter's explosive contents would shock the world and keeps it locked away for nearly 50 years. Were we warned nearly a century ago that if we did not change our ways, we were doomed? If so, who heard the warning? And who warned us? For thousands of years, prophets around the world have predicted the end of days. More than one suggests the apocalypse is fast approaching. We call this theoretical convergence between doomsday prophecies and today's events the Nostradamus effect. 1917, just outside the village of Fatima, Portugal. 3 shepherd children claim to experience visions of the Virgin Mary. According to legend, the apparition shared with them 3 cryptic secrets about mankind's dark future. Shrouded in mystery for 83 years, the final part of the prophecy may have foretold the ultimate cataclysm. A nuclear World War III, unfolding in our lifetime.
There was much speculation on this secret. What is behind it? Why is it not revealed? Will it speak about the end of the world?
This secret had to do with things that are so devastating that it would be the end of the world as we know it today.
We will examine whether the 3 secrets of Fatima are linked with actual events in our turbulent past, and if the 3rd and final prophecy depicts a future world smoldering from the flames of a 3rd World War. If other prophecies intersect with this theory, this may be evidence of the Nostradamus effect. Spring 1917, as World War I raged, bloodshed, disease, and death overwhelmed Europe. In these darkest of times, emerged reports of a message, perhaps delivered by an emissary from God.
People, they were aware that something happened there, something supernatural.
On May 13th, 10-year-old Lucia Santos and her younger cousins Jacinta and Francisco Marto were walking along a meadow. According to their account, suddenly there was a blinding light. A heavenly figure on a cloud appeared before them. Lucia recalled it was
a lady clothed in white, brighter than the sun.
They asked, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Our Lady." "And where do you come from?" "Well, I come from heaven." "And then, what do you want?" "I want you to come here every 13th of the month." And so, from May to October, always on the 13th of each month, Our Lady gave them an important message.
According to believers, at the heart of this message was a warning that humanity has angered God with its sinful ways, and the punishment will be war and annihilation. The 3 children were convinced that if they returned to the meadow on the 13th of each month, Mary promised to reveal how mankind might be redeemed. The children agreed to return to receive her instructions. According to the story, after Mary's first visit, Lucia decided they would keep it a secret. But the younger Jacinta couldn't contain her excitement. She told her mother, and soon word began to circulate. Despite deep religious traditions within the town, many were doubtful of the children's story.
Once the word started to spread around, the majority of people just dismissed it as a childhood fantasy.
But even under intense interrogation, the children's individual accounts were unusually consistent, each vividly recalling minute details of the encounter, uncommon for children of such a young age.
They kept always faithful to the same version of the facts. And so that made also people to believe that why were these little kids sometimes even threatened to death to confess? Why would they keep telling this if it was not true?
The following month, a few dozen villagers accompanied the children to the meadow to see if the Virgin Mary would appear as promised. According to later reports, some came to discredit the children. Many more truly wanted to believe, but all they saw was the children go into a trance during the supposed apparition of Mary. Still, as the weeks passed, interest intensified.
So the crowds grew, and there were more and more people who believed each time, even though they saw nothing.
According to the children, on July 13, 1917, the date of the third reported visit, Mary fulfilled her promise to reveal how mankind has sinned, how we might be redeemed, and the horrors that loomed if we instead chose to continue offending God. She supposedly told the children 3 secret prophecies, which they were not to disclose to anyone until the time was right. This revelation would wait decades. But Lucia knew that when the right time did come, no one would believe the message unless there was undeniable proof that it was heaven sent.
The children said to the Blessed Mother, "We're trying to get people to believe us, but we're having a lot of difficulty." And the Blessed Mother said, "On October 13th, around 12 o'clock, I will perform a miracle for all to see."
On that very day, the date of the apparition's final visit, reports suggest that as many as 70,000 rain-soaked people from all over Portugal stood in muddy fields and claimed to have witnessed what became known as the miracle of the sun.
The way my grandfather described it, the skies opened and there was the sun. Beautiful, wonderful colors. It was like dancing. That was the way he described it. The sun was dancing all around. Some people thought it was the end of the world.
For miles around, people saw this stupendous sign in the sky. It was seen by about another 15,000 or so in the periphery for about 20 miles in each direction. I mean, they weren't all drinking. You know, it would have taken something catastrophic to account for everybody having a mass hysteria like that.
There is no photographic evidence of the supposed apparition, and most experts agree that a zigzagging sun is simply not possible, citing the physical laws of the universe.
From a scientific perspective, I can tell you that physically did not happen. The sun did not change its rotation rate. It didn't change its position anyway, because if that had happened, all life on planet Earth would have been immediately driven to extinction. I don't deny their experience. I'm denying their interpretation of the experience.
Still, the Vatican, the world's preeminent Catholic institution, maintains to this day a clear position on the dramatic events that transpired that rainy Saturday afternoon.
The Church is extremely careful when it determines whether or not there is any reason to believe that an apparition truly took place. And they do an extremely thorough examination to protect their credibility. The miracle of the sun that took place on October 13th in 1917 was such a profound miracle, witnessed by 70,000 people. The Church believes was a matter of divine intervention. The Church accepts this as a miracle.
A year after the reported apparitions occurred, an influenza epidemic swept through Europe. The 2 youngest shepherd children later succumbed to the illness, never having uttered a word of the secret prophecies. But the eldest child, Lucia, survived, and several years later joined a convent. But it wasn't until her 1941 memoir that Sister Lucia finally felt it was the right time to reveal the full contents of the so-called first secret.
Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire, which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form. like transparent burning embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair.
Our Lady was telling us we're all going to encounter death and judgment if we live bad lives, sinful, and die outside of God's grace, offending Him. We will be lost. And I think that was the reason why God allowed the little children to see hell.
According to Lucia's account, the frightening images of hell revealed to the children are remarkably similar to the description of hell in the Bible's contentious book of Revelation.
The abominable and murderers, whoremongers and sorcerers, shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone.
The book of Revelation ends with those who have sinned burning in just such a hell, exactly as the first secret of Fatima portends. Or could the first secret have been a prophecy about World War I, a war that raged at the same time the prophecy was allegedly revealed to the children in 1917?
It's possible that these prophecies could have had something to do with the carnage that was going on in World War I, where you had battles like Verdun or the Somme, where you had huge artillery shells, gas killing thousands of people.
According to Lucia, Mary said this current war will end. But another war, one far more heinous, will come if her warning against atheism is not heeded. How might the prophecy of this next great war be connected to the even deadlier third secret? Many devout Catholics believe that in 1917, an apparition of the Virgin Mary bestowed upon 3 Portuguese children the so-called 3 secrets of Fatima. These prophecies are said to warn humanity of a terrifying end to the world if people do not return to a path of righteousness. But is there any truth to this story? A closer examination may shed light on a possible connection between these secrets and today's unrest. Some propose there is a direct correlation between Mary's prophecy of doom and the current conflict between the world's 2 largest religions. Could the location of the apparitions provide a clue to this link?
They took place in Fatima, Portugal, and Fatima was named after a princess who was named after Muhammad's most beloved daughter, Muhammad being the person who began the religion Islam that the Muslims follow today.
Some believe it is not a coincidence that the names of 2 of the most important religious female figures, Mary and Fatima, play a significant role in this story.
The Muslim people have great respect for the Blessed Mother. You know, she's the only woman mentioned in the Quran.
Mary, our Heavenly Mother, is in the Quran more than she's in the Bible. So there's a mysterious kind of connection.
Believers suggest this connection was the reason Mary chose the town of Fatima to bestow her prophecies.
Mary came to Fatima as a sign of her thankfulness to the Muslim people for having such a respect for her.
Might the so-called prophecies of Fatima eventually hold the key to relieving today's worldwide turbulence? And can this be a progression of events that began during the first half of the 20th century? Only the sole surviving witness to the apparition of Mary would have the answers. 24 years after claiming to be visited by the Holy Apparition, Lucia Santos, living as a nun in Tui, Spain, decided the world was finally ready to hear the first 2 of the 3 secrets of Fatima. The third and most frightening of the prophecies would remain hidden for another 60 years.
In 1941, she began to write her memoirs, and this is where she revealed everything that had happened.
First was a gruesome vision of souls burning in hell, which some interpret as a message about the horrors of World War I.
The war is going to end very soon, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse war will break out during the pontificate of Pius XI.
To some, the convergence of this secret with actual world events is very real. World War I did end the year after Mary's supposed appearance in Fatima. Also at that time in 1917, a Pope Pius XI did not exist. Only time would tell if this prediction would come true.
The Pope at the time of the vision was Benedict XV. So Our Lady even named the Pope, Pope Pius XI.
But there was more intrigue behind the prophecy. Lucia recalled that Mary's dark divination warned of a mysterious omen that would signal the beginning of a next great war.
When you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God, that He is about to punish the world for its crimes.
January 25th, 1938. 2 months after Adolf Hitler held a secret conference to reveal his war plans to his closest advisors. An ominous series of light patterns illuminated the night sky over the whole of Europe. Was this the foreboding sign described in the second secret, or a cosmic coincidence?
This spectacular aurora borealis was seen throughout Europe, so much so that people in Switzerland could read their newspapers at 11 p.m. at night. And this was the sign that God is about to punish the world.
But the cause of this natural phenomenon is clearly rooted in science.
It doesn't happen all the time that you get the aurora borealis being seen at those southerly latitudes. But in 1938, they were at solar maximum. And at solar maximum, you get these solar storms, strong magnetic field patterns on the sun that interacts with the Earth's magnetic field and causes bright auroral displays.
Some believe the light display in 1938 appears to lend some credence to the myth.
It was 47 days after that that Hitler invaded Austria.
Now people said that happened in 1938, but the World War didn't begin until 1939. But actually, historians say the war began when Hitler moved his soldiers into Austria. And so it happened during the time pontificate of Pope Pius XI.
The second secret culminated with yet another warning. This one about the political and economic phenomenon that was sweeping the world during this time: communism, and its perpetrator, Russia. According to Lucia, Mary had said,
I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars. Various nations will be annihilated.
A consecration is an entrustment of something to God. A country or a person or something placed under the protection of God or the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Our Lady warned that in Russia an evil would begin, which was communism, which would spread its errors around the world. It's through communism that, we got godless government because they were atheistic.
In 1917, revolution swept through Russia, ousting the Tsarist family, and soon after creating a communist dictatorship, the Soviet Union. Rivals for power were soon eliminated, including religious leaders.
They destroyed the churches, they destroyed the religious articles, they murdered thousands of civilians and said, it is the power and authority of government now that will exceed God in your lives.
People in the Soviet Union actually thought it was the end times, and they thought that Lenin was the Antichrist, because he told them there's no God, it's just the state, and here's Lenin, and he's going to give you everything you need. He's almost like a new God.
According to the story, these violations against Christianity prompted yet another holy apparition.
On June 13th, 1929, Our Lady appeared to Sister Lucia, and she said, the moment has come in which God asked the Holy Father in union with all the bishops throughout the whole world to consecrate Russia, and a certain period of peace will be granted to mankind.
With humanity's fate possibly hanging in the balance, Lucia relayed her urgent message to the current Pope. named Pius XI, as was predicted. But the Pope decided not to carry out the order.
For some reason, the Pope believed in them, but he didn't act on that consecration. And some feel, in fact, even Sister Lucia did mention this, that that delay allowed the evils of communism to spread.
Most historians would disagree, instead blaming the spread of communism on the growing strength of the Soviet Union. By 1941, World War II raged throughout Europe. Millions were suffering under the growing terror of the Soviet Union's oppressive communist system. Millions more were dying on battlefields and in labor camps. In an attempt to stop the devastation, the next Pope, Pius XII, proceeded with the consecration of Russia.
Pope Pius XII did make the first consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. But as Lucia then said, it was not done according to what Our Lady had requested, because it was made by the Pope himself, not in union with all the bishops around the world.
Mary's order still unfulfilled. Two more attempts at consecration were made in 1952 and 1964. But according to the distraught Sister Lucia, God remained displeased, and the world would suffer for it.
Because the consecration didn't take place when God wished it to take place, Russia spread her errors throughout the world.
Just as the apparition of Mary had allegedly warned, China became a communist state in 1949. Fidel Castro officially declared Cuba communist in 1961. By the early 1980s, nearly a third of the world's population lived under communist rule. Russia had successfully spread communism and atheism. Some Bible experts suggest the spread of communism was also foretold in the Book of Revelation, sometimes called the Book of the Apocalypse.
In Apocalypse 12, verse 3, it talks about a great red dragon, and he swept a third of the stars. And what's also interesting is at the height of its power, the Communist Empire held about a third of the world's population.
But is this hard evidence that multiple prophecies had converged with actual events? And that the second secret may have foretold the spread of communism? In the meantime, a third and more horrifying secret was yet to be divulged, one that, according to believers, may play out in our lifetime.
In 1941, Sister Lucia wrote down the first two secrets at the request of the bishop of Liera Fatima. And the bishop said to Sister Lucia later on, "There's more. We know there's more."
When Sister Lucia fell ill in 1943, the bishop ordered her to write down the third secret that she had kept hidden for so many years. Lucia complied, but the world would have to wait a little longer. She wrote out the secret and sealed it in an envelope, requesting that it only be opened in 1960 or upon her death. But why 1960? And what are the explosive contents within this envelope? A widely believed account suggests that in 1917, an apparition of the Virgin Mary appeared to 3 children in the small Portuguese village of Fatima. She shared with them 3 secrets containing a series of ominous prophecies. By 1960, many devout Catholics around the world were certain that the prophecies in the first 2 secrets had already come true. But the third secret, and any prophecies it may hold, remained a mystery. Equally mysterious was Sister Lucia's directive that the third secret not be revealed until 1960, when she said the world could properly interpret it.
Every subsequent pope after that was given the secret to read in a sealed envelope. The Pope read the secret and decided whether the time was right to reveal that secret or not. And most of the popes after that said, the time's not right yet. They sealed it back up again and they put it back in the Vatican archives.
Many wonder why the Vatican supposedly went against Lucia's wishes to reveal the secret in 1960. Public speculation about its contents ranged from nuclear Armageddon to deep rifts in the Catholic Church. (1960), the height of the Cold War. The U.S. was locked in a nuclear stalemate with the Soviet Union. The spread of communism loomed, a direct result of World War II. When Cuba fell to communist rebels, Marxist ideology gained a foothold in the Western Hemisphere.
There was this domino theory that once one country becomes communist, it falls like a domino, and then another country becomes communist, and another, and another, and another.
In response, the CIA planned the Bay of Pigs invasion to overthrow Fidel Castro's Cuban regime.
This government will do everything it possibly can to make sure that there are no Americans involved in the action.
But this coup attempt failed. Tensions between the U.S. and Cuba's sponsor, the USSR, escalated. Those who believed in the prophecies of Fatima feared that the threat of nuclear war was perhaps the third secret of the prophecy. Still, others suspected the third and final secret pertained specifically to the Catholic Church itself. And this, according to some, could be a link to the predictions of 16th century mystic Nostradamus. Nostradamus seems to have written about the papacy in quatrains that have intrigued scholars ever since.
After the seat is held 17 years, 5 will change in like elapsed terms. Then will one be elected in similar times, to whom the Romans will not much conform.
Pope Pius XI, the one apparently prophesied in Lucia's account of the second secret of Fatima, held the Holy Seat for 17 years, exactly the amount of time mentioned in Nostradamus' prediction. And it was during his pontificate that World War II began. As was also predicted by the second secret, according to Lucia. Could this be a previously unexplored connection between the 3 secrets of Fatima and Nostradamus?
5 will change in like elapsed terms. Then will one be elected in similar times, to whom the Romans will not much conform.
The 5th Pope after Pius XI was Pope John Paul II, the first non-Italian pontiff in 450 years. Many Catholics believe that John Paul is the very subject of the third secret of Fatima.
Pope John Paul II, his motto was Totus Tuus, I am all yours. His pontificate was dedicated to Our Lady. John Paul II said the message of Fatima is more important today than ever.
But what is that message? Some experts believe the third and final secret reveals a corruption of the Vatican, an abandonment of the principles of the Scriptures, and the eventual demise of the Catholic Church.
Apostasy is a giving up of the real Catholic faith completely, seemingly happening inside the Catholic Church and starting from the very top.
But the Catholic Church perseveres, meaning it is unlikely that its destruction is what the Vatican might have been concealing. This leads some to suspect the final secret of Fatima could indeed be a prophecy of nuclear apocalypse and our ultimate annihilation. A blessed apparition. 3 shepherd children, and 3 dark secrets, all supposedly shrouded in the protective armor of the Vatican. These are the prophecies of Fatima. For over 80 years, the enduring mystery of the third secret defied explanation. This is because the second secret supposedly claimed that if Russia was not consecrated, nations would be destroyed. Many Catholics feared the final secret contained an horrific prophecy foretelling nuclear war. Then, on May 13, 2000, the 83-year anniversary of the first apparition, the Vatican announced to the world that the third secret would finally be revealed. The Vatican published the mysterious contents of Sister Lucia's letter received in 1944, which detailed the final prophecy. The first part of the third secret told of averted disaster.
We saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand.
It conveyed the idea that a terrible fire would engulf the earth. And as the angel was ready to touch the earth with the flaming sword, the Blessed Mother put her hand out and stopped the sword from touching the world. I believe she saved us from a possible atomic war.
Was this a prophecy for the future or the past? Upon writing the letter, Sister Lucia had warned that it not be opened until 1960. Is there a connection between that date and the Virgin Mary's prophecy of world annihilation? April 17, 1961. The U.S. launched its failed Bay of Pigs invasion on the southern shores of Cuba. This seminal event led directly to the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962, where the world's first nuclear superpowers engaged in a standoff that had the potential to destroy the world as we know it.
Russia had brought atomic missiles to Cuba so close to our shoreline, and President John F. Kennedy said, look, no way. We want those missiles out of there right away. And Russia said, it's not going to happen. We knew we had the gun pointed at our heads.
Turn back. Shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
Kennedy had made it very clear in a televised address that if a missile comes from Cuba, we will react as if it had come from Moscow. So if those missiles had come from Cuba, we would have sent nuclear missiles to the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union would have responded back. And so it would have been worldwide annihilation.
Historians believe the diplomatic skills of President John F. Kennedy, coincidentally our first and only Catholic president, prevented a catastrophic nuclear exchange. Since the 1980s, communism has retreated, and today relations between the U.S. and Russia have softened considerably. Most historians attribute this cooperation to the fall of the Soviet Union. But devout Catholics give some of the credit to one of their most beloved pontiffs, Pope John Paul II, and his deep personal link to Lucia and the third secret of Fatima.
Pope John Paul saw himself in that particular secret.
As one of the Vatican's most important figures since the 1960s, the Pope may have known the third secret for decades. But only upon its momentous revelation did his connection to it finally become clear. Lucia's recollection of the third secret continued.
A bishop dressed in white, we had the impression that it was the Holy Father. The Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins. Having reached the top of the mountain, he and all the other religious figures are slain by bursts of bullets and arrows.
To many, this portion of the third secret describes the events of May 13, 1981, exactly 64 years after the Virgin Mary's reported first appearance in Fatima. 20,000 devotees lined St. Peter's Square for the papal address. Suddenly, shots rang out as a gunman attempted to take the life of Pope John Paul II.
as he was recuperating for about 3 weeks, he asked for all of the documentation on Fatima to be brought to him.
This attempted assassination provoked the Holy Father to re-examine the third secret. And it occurred to him that this secret was about him, and that it was fulfilled with this attempted assassination.
He said, according to that apparition, I would have died, but I came to the threshold of death, and the Blessed Mother prevented me. And he said that Our Lady guided that bullet all through him. The bullet missed major organs in the body of the Holy Father by just fractions and fractions of an inch.
A second attempt on the Pope's life came a year later during a visit to, of all places, Fatima, Portugal. A Catholic priest tried to stab the Pope with a bayonet, but was thwarted by security. Soon after the second assassination attempt, John Paul decided it was time to properly consecrate Russia.
He wrote a letter to all the bishops, including the Orthodox bishops, inviting them to join him for the consecration of the world, including Russia, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
On March 25, 1984, over 50 years after Lucia first appealed to the Catholic Church, the Vatican granted consecration to Russia.
And Sister Lucia said, "Yes, Holy Father, heaven has accepted the consecration." And then many things took place after that that were so wonderful. Gorbachev comes into power, he has a change of heart, and he decides that he wants to go and visit the Pope.
Mikhail Gorbachev, with a KGB background, the most powerful communist dictator in the world, his heart was softened. His intellect was enlightened. He saw truth.
Some experts disagree that the collapse of the former Soviet Union was divine intervention. They say instead it was Russia's strategy of self-preservation and survival in a rapidly changing world.
The Soviet Union had been a stagnant country and a stagnant economy for about 20 years when Gorbachev finally got in power. The economy was failing. I mean, people waiting in line hours just for bread and for toilet paper. He wanted to bring that sense of openness and restructuring because he realized he had to. Mikhail Gorbachev didn't have a change of heart about communism. It was simply a reform that got out of hand.
Still, some suspect a higher power at work to re-establish religious practices in a region that had been oppressed for over 70 years.
Consider the most atheistic country in the world forcing atheism everywhere. Gorbachev visits the Pope, the flag comes down over communist Russia for the last time, the wall comes down, and religious freedom is again practiced in Russia, and today the spiritual resurgence in Russia is absolutely phenomenal.
Is it possible that these decisive moments, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the Cold War, and the assassination attempts on the Pope, along with the fall of communism, are all mere coincidence? Or could they be the final fulfillment of the Fatima prophecy?
By 1989, the Berlin Wall came down without a battle. The people who put it up took it down. That's a conversion. It's a change of heart.
It ended the Cold War, and it ended that immediate threat of nuclear annihilation that had really hung over the world since the early 1950s.
Still, some maintain there is a further, darker prophecy held in the third secret, that this mystery is not yet resolved. Why do many still believe the Fatima prophecy relates to World War III? It is one of the most enduring and mysterious controversies of the Catholic Church, the prophecies of Fatima.
I think there is so much controversy and speculation because we, human beings, we want to see things clearly, and so we need to look for answers.
We're at a crossroads, and one direction will lead to world peace, and if we choose the wrong direction, it will lead to wars so terrible that nations will be annihilated.
The first secret foretold souls burning in hell. The second secret warned of a devastating war. Believers say both of these seem to have been realized as World War I and World War II. But some say the third prophecy remains unfulfilled. If so, what hidden truths might lie in the Vatican vault?
There are still some people, some groups who deny that the full text has been revealed and that the Vatican has kept something hidden.
The Vatican released what they said was the third secret on June 26, 2000. And it can't be the third secret. A person who got a chance to look at the third secret said that the third secret is about 20 to 25 lines. The Vatican's version of the third secret of Fatima is 62 lines. The Vatican's version of their third secret doesn't contain any signature at the end of that by Sister Lucia. And all the letters we know of, the authentic ones from Sister Lucia, have her signature at the end.
There are those who believe this supposedly still hidden part of the third secret contains a prophecy of future annihilation, perhaps a nuclear exchange. But most Vatican supporters are satisfied that the Church has adequately revealed the words of Sister Lucia's apparition of the Virgin Mary.
Thinking that the third secret has not been revealed in its entirety is sensationalism. The third secret's been revealed in its entirety because the Vatican has Lucia's original written in Portuguese. You know, and you go on the internet and find it.
Pope John Paul II said the message was given. The present Holy Father, Pope Benedict XVI, said the whole message has been given. Sister Lucia, I understand from people who knew her, was very upset when people said the whole message was not given.
On February 13th, 2005, after a lifetime satisfying what she believed were the Blessed Mother's wishes to spread the message of Fatima, Sister Lucia died of natural causes at the age of 97. 2 months later, Pope John Paul II, aged 84, also died. Today, the Vatican continues to uphold its belief in the events that took place in Fatima in 1917.
Pope Benedict XVI wrote a complete, comprehensive explanation of Fatima. The apparitions have the approval of the Church. All of the prophecies have come true.
But for some, questions remain about whether the prophecies are complete. They believe we may still be heading for global annihilation.
The prophecy has two sides to it. Either there will be war so terrible that nations will be annihilated, or there will be world peace.
To the Catholic Church and believers in the prophecy, the message of Fatima remains urgent.
The message that Our Lady came to bring, it's often called the peace plan from heaven. Mary came to tell us that we have to live responsible lives.
The apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima were one way among many of God coming into our world and saying, watch out, there's something which is not going well. The world is in danger. We are not happy with what is going on.
Has the third secret been decisively revealed? Or is there more, as some believe, hidden in the long shadow of the Vatican?
When you look at our country today, and I'm talking about the United States, we are perched on the precipice of the annihilation of nations Our Lady warned of. But annihilation, when you say that word, a mushroom cloud comes to people's minds and everything being blown up. But that's only one way to annihilate a nation. If you decimate the economy of a nation, you annihilate it.
Interpreters of today's events suggest that there is that possibility, with Wall Street in continued crisis and nuclear weapons in the hands of radical extremists.
The United States is the only country that has ever used nuclear weapons, and I think once the second country does it, it'll be much easier for the third and then the fourth and then the fifth one to do it.
Peaceful.
Others suggest there is an opportunity to successfully change course.
The real question is whether we use our free will to bring world peace to Earth first.
As the world's two leading nuclear powers, the United States and Russia must lead by example.
Or whether we use our free will to bring hell to earth first. Because what's at stake is the salvation of souls and world peace. And what could be more important to humanity than the salvation of souls and world peace?
If the Fatima prophecy converges with peace among nations, this may serve as a final vindication of the three children and their vision.